Call the meeting to order. Appreciate everybody allowing me to join by phone. I know we've moved this meeting twice, and I didn't want to move it a third time. Appreciate everybody's tolerance. If it gets a little awkward, I'll transfer the chair over to Ed, if necessary. So, first item is to adopt the agenda. The agenda was duly posted. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, all, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from January 29th. These were posted, I believe, Monica,
2 days ago.
properly. Assume everyone's had a chance to read them, but didn't know if everyone needed a minute or two or if people were prepared to vote. Do we need a minute, or do we want to go ahead and vote?
Just a minute.
Okay. Just let me know when you're ready, Ed.
Okay.
All right. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion, corrections?
There's one spelling correction to Clifton Lawson's name.
Okay,
I'll make that correction.
all right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes as posted with the correction mentioned for the July 29th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes. Audit committee follow-up. Monica, I'll turn this over. Is this you?
It
You lead
is.
this part?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right.
So we basically have, the follow-up report is in your packets. There were items that were closed from last meeting as well as new items that opened up. The items which were closed from the last meeting, there was one, and that was the attached, this actually was one that was open and closed. It's at the bottom of the list. It says 7/29/2014 AC meeting date. It's the attachment of approved vendor listing to the internal audit service provider procurement policy. That policy has been updated as per direction and the motion that was passed. So that item was open and closed last meeting. It was open and closed since last meeting. Also at last meeting, we opened up a new item, which was the presentation of Commissioner Code of Ethics to full commission for approval. And that is, I think, takes October 2nd, the next meeting.
I figure it'll just be part of the audit committee update, and we'll make it part of the material.
Okay, that's fine. So that's the action item on that. We still have 4 other items that were open. One is the AC self-evaluation, which is currently on the agenda to be closed out, hopefully. The other items, 2 items really kind of go to, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. The other item is the AC motion to obtain external legal counsel in the review and assessment of compliance policies. We did talk about this briefly last meeting. We said we were going to discuss it further in executive session, but during executive session, we did not get around to discussing it. So that item probably needs to be cleared up for certain in executive session today. And then the next 2 items are kind of together. The statutory requirement of 70% allocation to equity on cost versus market basis, and the addition of timely or standard reporting. Those 2 items will be addressed as part of RSIC's management's action plan to the Funston fiduciary review, as well as the response to the commissioner's request for information at the WAMP strategic planning meeting relative to performance reporting. So those 2 will remain open, but until management, I guess, further delineates their action plan for Funston, and it's going to be a part of that for those items. So that's what's open, and what has closed. Do you guys have any questions?
No, we'll take up the one item in executive session.
Yes,
so.
I'll make sure of that.
All right, is that it for that item,
That
Monica?
is correct, yes.
Okay, all right. So Andrew, I assume next it moves over to you on the ERM and compliance update?
This is a standing agenda item, but, so I'll make my update relatively brief, since we recently met with the audit committee. As I mentioned at the last audit committee meeting, the Funston recommendation tracking sheet is going to take the place of the Deloitte dashboard. Given our recent change in executive directors and bringing Mr. Hitchcock on board, he has proactively actually sat down with me as one of his main priorities to understand the Funston recommendation tracking sheet and how to best to stay on top of it and how to tackle it. So I expect to hear from him in the near future. He'll report outwards to commissioners. You know, he has a lot of things going on also, but that's one of his top priorities. So that's not going to be forgotten. It's just, you know, he just came on board, so we'll make sure we stay on top of that. Also, I do still plan to meet with commissioners on ERM. Me and Alan need to touch base on some topics, you know, and then we'll progress with meeting with commissioners individually. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I do plan to give an update on compliance, kind of a holistic compliance program update, you know, to try to figure out what the audit committee sees as priorities for the compliance department, given, you know, limited resources. That's all I had.
Was that it,
That's
Andrew?
it. That's it.
All right. Any questions, Ed or Peggy for Andrew?
No.
No questions, but I would just like to say that as we are getting ready to embark on our own fiduciary audit with Funston for PIBA, and John Page, our internal auditor, has been looking to Andrew for some mentoring and guidance, and I want to say how much I appreciate the Investment Commission sharing its staff and historical perspective with Funston with us. I think that will be very beneficial to the fund as a whole as PIBA undergoes the same type of audit. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, but by all means, you know that any support y'all need from our side, you know, with PIBA, you know, we're happy to provide it, and if we need to adjust the audit schedule accordingly, we can.
That's much appreciated.
Any further comments or questions related to that item? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next internal audit update.
Okay, that would be me. We are just progressing towards the plan, which was approved at last audit committee meeting. Also at last audit committee meeting, there was a report that was distributed, and per your direction, you wanted to actually just have discussion on that report, which is the RSIC annual investment report. And that's in your packets.
Yeah, that's in our folder. It's dated, I believe, July 31, 2014. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So we've had this now. You know, Monica, I don't know if you want to go through it and kind of hit the highlights. I mean, the commissioners and audit committee have had it now, time to look at, but there's, you know, some of the key elements. Do you want to go through it and kind of hit on those real quickly?
Sure. The best way to really look at this, if you just want to highlight it, is to go to page 8, which is the executive summary overall process of evaluation. And primarily, the scope of this was to look at the annual investment reporting process as it was for June 30th, 2013. So we did two things. We looked at the actual report for June 30th of 2013, and then we looked at the controls around the process and preparing such report. And based upon our audit tests and inquiries, we had two observations. The first one was several internal controls were determined to not be designed appropriately, and this were deemed ineffective in mitigating their relative risk. And that was a medium rating. And then we had one that was, IA was not able to determine the existence and effectiveness of several internal controls due to lack of evidence. Additionally, IA testing found errors that would suggest that the internal control was not operating effectively. And those were deemed to be medium. If you go to page 6, it gives you an understanding of what a medium rating is. And primarily, it's all based upon risk to the organization, and we have developed a standard protocol and for how we categorize all of the observations that we have. The framework basically states that for a medium risk, its management should address the observation in a reasonable time frame because it could have an adverse impact on the integrity or effectiveness of RSIC's internal controls, but is not likely to have a critical, immediate, and significantly adverse impact. This implies that management should institute plans to remediate the finding and pay attention to the associated risk. The criteria used to assess the risk rating should include any or one of the following. And primarily what we recommend is that corrective action plans be taken within a 60-day period. The actual corrective action plans for this, if you go to page 9, page 9 gives you more detail about the specific observation for each one of the items. Of this one, page 9 really deals with the first one, but the details are in this next couple of pages. For the first observation, where we said several internal controls were determined to not be designed appropriately, and this were deemed ineffective in mitigating their relative risk as follows. The first one was that the RSIC reporting cycle data framework and procedures does not adequately define procedures to prepare the annual investment report. It just states what the requirements are. So there's a statutory requirement that the report has to be prepared a certain way, and that's what they were kind of utilizing as their procedure. However, what we found is that the procedure or the process should really spell out things like reviews of information or specifics more as to how the report is prepared, where information is received from, or whom information is given to, rather than just basically cutting and pasting from the statutory document what the requirements are. That's part of it, but we felt that it needed to be a little bit more robust. So management had something there, but we just were recommending that they be a little bit more robust in their procedures. The second item was process for review and approval of reporting policies and procedures is loosely established and undocumented. And again, this is very normal for organizations with our maturity level. We have processes in place. We have things that we do on a consistent basis. They're just not documented. Doesn't mean that, we don't have them. We just don't have things documented because we're, just quite frankly, the staff is trying to get the job done. And it's sometimes very difficult to go back and write the procedures and document what you do. But they were already trying to do that when we were there. They just needed to follow through with their course of action and making sure that those policies and those procedures are appropriately documented. The creation and existence of a cover letter listing the required recipients per, and this is statute 91690B, does not adequately provide evidence that the AIR was distributed to the required recipients per statute. This particular issue has to do with being able to definitively say that we complied with the statute, and the way in which we were currently doing it was more of a negative thing. It's like, well, we dropped it off, but we had no proof. So it was pretty much our word just that says, yeah, we dropped it off. And what we're just recommending is that be a little bit more solidified, that be a little bit more definitive, so that if someone says, how do you know you comply with this? You say, here you go, here's our documentation that we comply. And so that was the nature of that. Of course, the recommendation is to revision of policies and procedures to include details that would ensure consistent preparation of the AR on an annual basis, the establishment of policy and procedures relative to the updating, review, and approval of reporting policies and procedures, and the development of a procedure or process that would appropriately validate and document the distribution of the annual report. And the target date for completion is September 30th of 2014. Management is here, and to my knowledge, they are working towards that. So I'll give them an opportunity in a few minutes just to kind of respond, and they can kind of tell you where they're at with this particular one. The next item and the final item was that internal audit was not able to determine the existence, and that's on page 10. Internal audit was not able to determine the existence and effectiveness of several internal controls due to lack of evidence. Additionally, internal audit testing found errors that would suggest that the internal control was not operating effectively. This specifically had to do with things relative to the publishing and printing of the report and the accuracy of the report. There were specific instances in which we found during our testing where there may have been some inaccuracies, not of a material nature, but there were inaccuracies or omissions to the report. And so we just recommend that the policies be revised to include the details. We believe that if the policies and procedures were written in a way in which they consistently perform this, those items would have been caught by the management team. So again, the target date for completion of corrective action being September 30th, 2014. And that was the nature of our report. Any questions?
Well, if management's there, why don't, and I know we've had some changes, right? So obviously, new management from the owners of the task, maybe before we go to questions, if they could, y'all could bring us up to speed on, kind of where y'all were in that transition, and do we need to bump the date, and, kind of where things stand.
No, this is John Rickner.
And Alan, I will let John address kind of where we are on this.
Okay.
Hey, Alan.
Hey.
I'm director of the reporting department, and we're responsible for the production of the annual investment report. We do it in conjunction with other areas, specifically communications. They're the biggest one that we work with. But ultimately, we're responsible for putting this out. The audit, by all means, was fair and accurate, and it was a very helpful process for us. It did uncover some areas that we did need to strengthen. The recommendations that were made by audit, they have been addressed. Policy procedures have been firmed up, specifically addressing issues of review, issues of evidence of delivery, as well as, I guess, the process for a formal sign-off of sections and ultimately the final product.
Okay.
And as is typical with an audit of nature, these items will go on our follow-up reports to do a follow-up review, typically within a 12-month period of time.
Okay. All right. So I take it that we're still on schedule. We don't need to bump the date back or anything like that.
Yeah, it's very timely because we're right now starting the next year's. So the date was set so that the updates to the policy procedures were in place before we started the next cycle. So that's why we strove to get it done before now.
Okay. And can I just ask a question because I don't know, but just back to the written, policies, do we have a general template that employees know to follow when they realize, hey, we're, implementing or developing a new policy, drop it in this form and it goes into you know, a master PMP that's on a, you know, shared system? I mean, what sort of status of those?
Alan, this is James with IT. So we have an area where we have form templates that includes things like letterheads and memos, and we do have policy templates that are there, which gives some guidance as to the headings that need to be addressed. It gives credence to revisions and other things that you would normally have in policy templates. And then we do have a single location on our SharePoint environment where all policies and procedures are posted and the agency is aware of that location. And then we often will send out communication to the folks that are involved with the policy as it's either updated, added, or revised to ensure that folks are aware of the policy revision.
And Alan, you can see an example of the template that he's talking about. We utilized it when we did the policy, the service provider policy, which is also in y'all's packet.
Mm-hmm.
The updated one is in your packet, so you can see an example for how it has revision history, document control information, and so there is a template to the form.
Okay. And then we aggregate them all in one place for a PMP manual.
Not a manual, it's a single location on
Right.
a
Online,
SharePoint
yeah.
digital environment. So it's not a
Yeah.
physical manual, but it is one
Yeah.
place where you can see all policies
Yeah.
and procedures that are currently relevant.
Right, okay. All right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that also is up to the department. It's like some of internal audits procedures, I know, like this one is not there. It's on our own shared drive, in our internal audit folder, but it's not out in, I think, the general policy and procedure.
Right, there's, when Ms. Corbett was here, she really tried to get those of us that kind of touch the agency as a whole to have that single environment. So there are instances where internal audit may have some internal procedures that they use. It is up to each department to place those in that public location. But Ms. Corbett definitely, for those of us in operations and on the investment side, was asking that we ensure that all of our policies and procedures, for the most part, are out there in that shared location. And that does include things like handbooks and HR material and other items such
Yes.
as that.
And Alan, this is Mike, I'll make that a priority to get a deeper dive on all that and how all that comes together and to make sure that that process is being followed and that it's user friendly to.
Any other questions or discussions for Monica or management? Seems like things are operating as they should to me. Ed, Peggy, either of y'all have questions?
I don't have
I
any.
have none.
Okay. Monica, any final comments on that? Seems like things
No,
are
we're-
operating as they should.
Yeah, we're good.
What was just reported, okay. All right. Your next item? Yeah, wait, I guess, do we need to formally adopt this, or?
No,
what
it just comes
think that-
before you, for your review.
Okay.
The report was issued, but you guys wanted to discuss it.
Okay, all right. I think we now discussed it. If there's no further discussion, we can consider it a closed item until it comes up in your normal review process, Monica.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, we'll go to the next item. All right. What's next, Monica?
The audit committee self-evaluation results. So, as per our audit committee charter, there needs to be an annual evaluation, as well as professional standards of the audit committee, a self-evaluation that's done. At the last audit committee meeting, we provided the members of the audit committee, with the audit committee self-evaluation, except for Ms. Boykin because she was new. We did, however, provide that to her predecessor, Mr. Travis Turner, and he provided input for the time in which he was on the committee. So Ed Giobbe, Alan Gillespie, and Travis Turner provided their self-evaluations to me. I then compiled those results into the document that you have in your packets. What you will see is an average rating of the three self-evaluations, and then any comments that may have been made by a particular individual are included along with those initials for the individual, AG meaning Alan Gillespie, EG meaning Ed Giobbe, and TT meaning Travis Turner. Overall, it seems that the committee believes that they are fulfilling their responsibilities and that they have great performance. There was some areas in which you may want to draw additional attention to. The one in which there was a 3 is item number 15. And both Travis and Alan had comments on this. And item 15 says, reviews the external audit scope and approach, ensuring members understand and are satisfied with the extent of the audit work anticipated and the level of assurance obtained. We honestly, we don't own financials, so typically this external audit work normally is for if we own financials, but because we do feed into PIBA's financials, we provide information that is critical to the preparation of the overall financials for the plan. In the past, we have had Clifton, Lawson, Allen come and give you guys an update, and that is a standard item. If you guys would like to speak with them more or have more input on that, I think that you'll find Clifton, Lawson, Allen actually is being engaged at this point for agreed upon procedures, which we talked about at the last audit committee meeting. So to that extent, you will have that touch point with them on an external audit basis, but not for financials per se, but for work that we do that feed the financials. So it's a little bit of a twist here in terms of how the audit committee interacts with external audit from what is normally the norm, because we don't have our own set of financials.
Right, so, I mean, my comments on this were really, you know, I think getting the update from Clifton Larson is just the way the question was worded, right? And it's not our task to own, so.
Right. And
But
this
the
is
way
a
the question
templative
was written,
form.
it was to review the external audit scope. I mean, that's really not our purview
Right.
to do, but, so I think what we're doing is appropriate. I gave it a 3 simply because of the way the question was worded, right?
Okay. Yeah, this is a templative form for audit committees as a whole, so it doesn't take into consideration our unique situation with our financials. Okay, did you want to go over any other comments? There was one other area in which there was a 3, and that's number 21, but that's along the same lines. Oversees the periodic financial reporting process and reviews interim and annual financial statements in order to be in a position to recommend to the board of directors the release of these financial statements. Now, we don't have financial statements, but we do have the annual investment report, which the audit committee does have purview over, which we just discussed that process and that review that we did over that. But there would not be interim statements. There would be annual, but not interim. Okay. Any questions, concerns?
Yeah, I mean, the only other question, right, you know, and I'd kind of put some comments generally, right? I mean, we established the audit committee. You know, it seems like generally the audit committee, we're okay with how it functions, but any committee we ought to plan for, you know, as committee turns over and as commissioners turn over, sort of that training element. I don't know, Monica, if we kind of laid out what formalized training would be. I know various commissioners come with, you know, different backgrounds as well, right? What a training plan four commissioners would look like. And I only bring it up because I would be interested in other people's feedback was, I don't know what the rules are about composition of committees or subcommittees, but ultimately could we, or should we, look externally, for expertise if we don't have it or don't, have the training plan, and that's why I put the comment on 8 about, do we, again, I don't know kind of its roles, but just kind of a discussion,
Okay.
right?
Well, let me provide some insight there if I can from my experience. Typically, there are rules governing the composition, particularly of the audit committee, but that is for publicly operated entities. As a best practice, other entities, nonprofit, governmental, can follow the same model if you so choose to. There is not a requirement, to my knowledge. Yes, Barbara?
Oh, no, when you're done. When you're
Okay.
done. Yeah.
From a composition standpoint, it is prudent to have a financial expert on your audit committee for the issues in which may come up relative to financials or disclosures related to annual reports or anything like that, that if you have that area of concern within your operations. So this is definitely something that's left up to the full commission to decide because the full commission decides I guess the governance policies decide what the makeup of the audit committee is. Is that correct, Robert, Dory? And so, yeah, so that is something that can be discussed or addressed, through the governance policies. If the committee so chooses that they would like to take a look at that, we can do that. As it relates to training, I have developed what I typically utilize as an onboarding presentation. Unfortunately, Peggy's got cut short and we haven't gotten her back to be able to put her through that. But I do plan to try to redo that. Yeah, to do that. I think, and then also Mike just came on board. So that presentation that I've developed is usable for both commission members, committee members, or even new management that's coming on, for them to understand the role of internal audit as well as the role of the audit committee, the roles and the responsibilities, as well as what they can expect from us. So we do have kind of a standard one for understanding what we do. Now, also you were looking, I think, and had mentioned to me just training in general about the responsibilities of understanding risk and how to manage risk that the audit committee is charged with, and I will be working towards that. I do try from time to time to send articles to the committee that I feel would be informational to them, helpful in their responsibilities. I will continue to do that and maybe even ramp that up a little bit. But again, you and I have talked offline about establishing a little bit more formal training, not just for audit committee members, but for commission members, and I will be working on that as well.
Mr. Chairman, may I just note a couple of items for the committee?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. In addition to the audit committee charter, which you all should be thinking about as you weigh questions about training and committee composition, there is also one governance policy that provides some guidance and assistance to you all. It's the committee's policy, Policy 6, and 3 or 4 things that I just wanted to highlight for you all as you think about this issue. First, at the present time, Governance Policy 6 does make it clear that the Executive Director of PIBA is to be a member of the Audit Committee with voting privileges. The second thing that you all should be aware of is, given the fact that the Audit Committee is a standing committee, right now the governance policies provide that it will consist of 3 members. But then Mr. Gillespie, there was a very interesting question posed by Mr. Gillespie, I believe. There is the ability under Governance Policy 6 to appoint persons other than commissioners to serve as non-voting members of a committee on an ad hoc basis, it says. So there is a mechanism to perhaps do that, but they would be non-voting members. That is something you'll have to just really consider. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of this report, I guess, we've done it, we'll provide it up as part of our report to the full commission, and it'd be for the full commission to decide. And obviously we have the comments and sort of thoughts on it, but obviously we're still a pretty small group, and sometimes time, interest, and otherwise can make keeping something functional moving appropriately. I just again, I think it behooves us to think about not just our own roles, but when we step aside or other people are serving on the committee, to make sure it continues to function appropriately. Any other thoughts or comments?
I don't have any.
I have none.
All right. So I will be given, we'll just, I guess, do we have to take a motion or anything, Monica or Robert, on, as it relates to this, or?
No.
We just accept it and
Yeah,
then
you
report
just-
it up to
Yeah, you
share
just
to the
needed
full
to,
commission?
we needed to present it that in the meeting to be in compliance with our audit committee charter.
Okay. All right, so that part is done. All right, and the next item is our executive session. So, unless there's anything that should be discussed beforehand, can I get a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Can you read what we need to go into executive session for, please?
Sure. The committee seeks to go into executive session to discuss security matters pursuant to South Carolina Code, Section 30-4-70A3, and receive advice from legal counsel pursuant to South Carolina Code, Section 30-4-70A2.
Okay, Alan.
If
Members
y'all
to
would,
stay?
anyone who's not part of the executive session, y'all let me know when they've cleared the room, then we can
Okay.
start.
Okay. I think what we're gonna be discussing will involve Mike, James, and of course, legal. And then Andrew, you can stay if you'd like, because, it's overall risk you should be aware of, I believe. I think that's about all.
John, thank you.